Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of Baba Yaga's Magic. Today, we're going to be talking about who is Baba Yaga. So, Baba Yaga, or Baba Yaga, as we refer to her in Ukrainian, is the witch of Slavic folklore. We see her as a character in so many of the tales in Eastern Europe, always as a powerful old crone who lives deep in the forest in a hut that stands atop 2 chicken legs. In some stories, she appears as a vicious ogre, and other stories, she's a magical helper who offers enchanted tools or information. Sometimes she's a wise elder who tests the hero or heroine and rewards them with a horse that can jump over rivers or a magical skein of yarn that will lead them to their goal. Other times, she appears like the witch in the story of Hansel and Gretel, trying to trick children into going into the oven so she can eat them. But is she just a fairy tale villain, or is she something more? In this episode, we'll explore this ancient spirit of feminine power and discover the real story behind the most famous Slavic witch. Before we get into that, though, I want to give a small plug for my new book that's coming up. Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft is an exciting book that I wrote, and it's coming out in April. It's an exciting book of ancient Slavic magical practices. In this book, you'll sit at Baba Yaga's side and listen to her stories about the birth of the sun, the land of the blessed ones, and the spirits that live right beside us. More importantly, you'll learn the secrets of her magic, crafts, talismans, inscriptions, incantations, and rituals that will allow you to discover your own Baba Yaga within. Each chapter develops the fairy tale of Vasilina, the girl who is sent to fight the frightful witch or to meet the frightful witch. And Baba Yaga herself narrates explanations of folklore represented in the tale. I complete each chapter by sharing how to put the elder witch's wisdom into practice with instructions for Ukrainian folk embroidery, weaving wreaths from herbs, using magical poppets, and working with the spirits of the forest, the hearth, and the sauna. With more than 50 illustrations and a bounty of tips and information, this book teaches you to embrace the beauty and power of these traditional practices as you learn to reclaim your own personal magic. This book is going to be released April 8th, but you can pre-order yours from the usual places: indiebound.org, bookshop.org, barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. And of course, if you'd like a signed copy, you can get it at my shop, parlorofwonders.com. Or you can call up your local bookshop or metaphysical store and pre-order it from them. Something I really recommend. Keep those little local bookshops and metaphysical stores going and pre-order the book from them. And you're doing something really good in the world. So just wanted to give a little plug about that. And now we are going to talk about the star of the show, Baba Yaga. So Baba Yaga appears in hundreds, if not thousands, of folktales in the oral tradition. And later, these oral stories were written down for people. In the mid-1800s, a Russian ethnographer, Alexander Afanasyev, began collecting oral tradition folktales and published them. And these were eventually translated into other languages. And the Russian name for this witch, Baba Yaga, became the most famous one. However, she appears in stories in all Slavic countries: Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Russia, of course, Belarus, Ukraine, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Slovenia. And in these countries, she appears under many names. For example, in Poland, her name is Baba Yaga. Belarus, she's Baba Yaga, like she is in Ukraine. Czech and Slovak, she's Jezi Baba. Serbo-Croatian, she's Baba Roga. She goes by Igaya, Iga, Yaga, Yagaba, Yagabova, Egabova, Egabica, Yegaboba, Yaganishna, and the list goes on and on and on. So in these different stories, she may have different names and attributes, but some of the things about these stories really connect them. And we see these kinds of themes and different special attributes of her show up again and again. One of her most favorite ones, one of her most famous ones, is that she lives in a little hut that stands deep in the forest and is standing on chicken legs. These chicken legs are moving, living chicken legs, and her house moves around on these chicken legs. Sometimes it's on one chicken leg, sometimes it's on two, sometimes on four chicken legs. Sometimes it's not even chicken legs, it's a spindle that her house stands on, but her house turns around and around on these legs or this spindle. Sometimes we see in stories that her hut is surrounded by a fence of bones with skull lanterns on top of the bones. And sometimes there'll be a part of the story where someone comes and she says they see that there's one skull missing. And she says, I need another skull for my fence, another skull lantern for my fence. So that sometimes shows up in their stories. Another attribute that is associated with her is that her hut is very small. She fills it up. So she can be found stretched over the stove, cramped in this little hut, reaching from one corner of the hut to the other, her nose touching the ceiling, her elbow stuck in the corner. She's really cramped in this little small hut that she lives in. Another famous thing about Baba Yaga is that she will often travel with a mortar and pestle, in a mortar and pestle. So if you know, a mortar and pestle is the thing that we grind herbs with, right? So she sits in a giant mortar and pestle, and she either scoots around on the ground or flies through the air in this giant mortar. And she pushes herself along with the pestle, and she sweeps away her tracks with a broom or with a mop. Finally, another attribute of her is that she is considered old and ugly. Oh, she's old crone, and she's really ugly. She has a bony leg. She has iron teeth, and she's really scary. Sometimes they describe her as like snot running out of her nose and lice in her hair, and she's really scary and not attractive. So in these tales, when we would encounter her in these tales, the hero or the heroine would go into the deepest part of the forest where they would come upon her small one-room hut, a hata or izba that stands on those two enormous chicken legs scratching at the ground. And in the stories, a lot of the stories, the house would turn its back to the heroine or the hero until she said, "Hut, hut, turn your back to the forest and your front toward me." And then the hut, when she would say those magic words, the hut would turn around and the heroine could enter into the hut to encounter Baba Yaga. When the hero or the heroine comes in, sometimes Baba Yaga says she smells the hero or the heroine and exclaims, "Foo, foo, I smell a Russian spirit," or "I smell a Russian scent." It's very similar to our story of Jack and the Beanstalk, where the giant says, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman," right? So she would come in, the person would come in and Baba Yaga would say, "I smell the Russian scent," or "I smell the Russian spirit." Then she might test them. She might ask them if they come of their own free will or if they come on someone else's errand. At that point, she might try to trick the hero and heroine, try to eat them, or give them a series of challenges before giving them a reward. Some of the tales feature three Baba Yagas, often depicted as sisters. In a version of The Maiden Tsar, for example, the hero Ivan makes his way to the home of one of three Baba Yagas to find the directions to the magical thrice 10th kingdom. Each Baba Yaga that he meets directs him to her sister, and then he finally arrives at the house of the third and the youngest Baba Yaga, where he has a magical encounter. Now, so far, as I've been telling you these things, she may just seem like a fairy tale supporting character, right? That there's the hero or the heroine, and she's just the villain of the story, or somebody that's a donor in the story. But there's actually much evidence that her importance and her stories actually go back to the oldest times. In the ancient times, she was not called Baba Yaga. She was called the forest woman and the forest mother, or the forest grandmother. And this was a spirit who lived in the forest. The spirit was often associated with snakes, sometimes dragons. Dragons and serpents are often commingled. She was associated with birds, and she was also associated with the creatures of the forest. In ancient times, people who lived near the forest and worked in the forest or depended upon nature for their food would appeal to her for safety and bounty with the unpredictable nature of the forest. It was very important to appease the spirits of the forest, to make, sort of exchanges with them and to make them happy so that you would be protected and have a fruitful hunting expedition or mushroom gathering or whatever you were doing in the forest. Like nature, Baba Yaga can be approached with respect and reverence, and you can receive gifts from her. But also, like nature, if you approach her with arrogance, you'll probably get a lesson of some kind. Now, if we fast forward a little bit from those ancient times to when Christianity arrived on the scene in Eastern Europe, it was about 988 AD. The old Slavic spirits, the old ways, the gods, the deities were flipped on their heads. So we have some, as you know, that were incorporated into Christianity. So they were saints such as Paraskeva Piatnitsia, who were turned into saints. They were spirits that were turned into saints. But, you know, a spirit like Baba Yaga, she's not going to be a saint. So they turned her into a demon. So we see in these stories, you know, where she's an ogre, she's a demon, she's eating people, she's destroying people, she's chasing, she's like the bad guy in the stories. Those are the more recent stories, but we can find some of the stories that are older and less touched by what I would call Christian propaganda. And we can see how she was portrayed. In the oldest stories, she is tough. She's definitely not a pushover. She's not a sweet little grandma. She's tough. But she tests her heroine or hero with difficult tasks and then rewards them with a magical item or important information. This is remarkably similar to an initiation ceremony. So initiation means being introduced as a member of a community. So for example, in Western Europe, you might have in centuries past, maybe you were a stone worker or a mason, and you would want to join a guild so that you could work and have the protection of the guild and so on. So to join the guild, you would go through a series of trials to leave your old life behind and begin your new life as a mason. That's where Masonic groups come from. Freemasonry all comes from actual stonemasons who had a guild and had initiations. So this happened all over the world and in a lot of cultures. The same would occur if you were going to be a warrior, for example, or a monk or a witch or a wise woman. You would experience possibly some kind of initiation if you were going to join a group where you would leave your old life behind and enter into your new identity. And there would be a series of tests to commemorate this and ensure that you were ready and to test your commitment. So Baba Yaga is the forest mother who performs the initiations into the world of spirit. So oftentimes in her stories, she wants to put the heroes into her big wood stove, her peach, as it's called in Ukrainian. The peach was traditionally this big, stove in the house that would heat the house, cook your food, and all of that took up a quarter of your little small home, right? Your little cabin. This big wood stove would take up a big part of your home. And the peach was traditionally the home of the ancestors, and fire was representational of the ancestor spirits. So with that, she was the gatekeeper of the spirit realm and the one who could initiate someone into communion with the spirit realm. Basically, introducing someone into being a spirit worker, a magician, a witch, and so on. Now, in a minute, I'm going to tell you the ways that you can connect with Baba Yaga. But if after listening to this episode, you still have questions about Slavic magic, well, I have some exciting news for you. There's a way that you can meet with me for free and ask me your questions about Slavic spells, spirituality, witchcraft, folk magic, spirits, divination, and more. Join me on Sundays for the live podcast recording and for extra bonus content, a live Q&A after the podcast. It's free to join, and all you have to do is be a member of the Spell Squad. And to do that, all you have to do is sign up at spellsquad.com. Our meeting takes place every Sunday except the first Sunday of the month at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. If you want to see past episodes, you can check them out on my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Madam Pamita, or you can listen to the podcast by going to babayagasmagic.com or finding it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher. So go ahead over to spellsquad.com and sign up today so you can join the Spell Squad, and you'll get a bunch of free goodies, and you get to join me with a cup of tea like I have right now and download some deep spiritual knowledge. It's always fun in the clubhouse, and I would love to see you there. So if you'd like to connect to the mother of the forest, the one who can initiate you into the world of magic and spirits, there are some ways that you can do this. First, you need to know, though, before you get started, that she is an initiator. She will test you, not just to test you to see if you're worthy. It's really not meant to keep you out or close the door to you. Sometimes people think tests are meant to prevent people from joining something or becoming a part of something. And maybe there are cases of that. But in her case, it's not to keep you out or to close the door. It's really something that will make you decide if you're serious about something. You will close the door if you're not ready, in other words. She will give you hard challenges that will test your will and determination. She'll give you these tests so that you will evolve and expand beyond what you think you're capable of doing. But she knows you're capable of doing it, but she'll test you to prove so that you see for yourself what you're capable of. A great example of this was when I was writing my book. When I wrote the book, it was really challenging. I had to learn to read Cyrillic. I had to learn to research in Ukrainian. I had to learn to find information. And then so many challenges came with that book, but each one, I mean, sometimes I was really in tears as I was going through the book because it was really hard. But as I did it and I completed it, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that I did something that I thought I could never do. And I was able to accomplish and achieve. And so I think that is like the gift that you get when you meet these challenges. So before you get started with Baba Yaga, you will be tested. So be prepared to be tested by her. If you're ready to be tested, tested again and tested yet again, then here are ways that you can meet with her. First one, go out into the forest, right? Forest is where she lives. This is her habitat. This is where she lives. And this is the place that you can leave offerings for her. So appropriate offerings to leave in the forest can be something that is natural and can decompose, of course. You can leave, for example, some bread and salt. That is a traditional offering of hospitality. It's considered like a sacred offering. So if you leave a loaf of bread with a little salt sprinkled on top, that's a great offering for that, especially bread that you've made yourself and you put your energy and effort into. That can be a great offering. Another offering can be eggs. Eggs are associated with her. Eggs are really associated with all magical beings. It's a very important topic in Slavic magic. So you can leave some eggs. You can leave some hard-boiled eggs. You can leave some raw eggs for her. You can dye some eggs with natural food colorings and leave those for her, and then leave them out in the forest for her as an offering. And you can leave actually anything that will be consumed by the forest. So you don't want to leave anything plastic, anything fake, anything that's going to be littering. You don't want to do that, but leaving something that can be consumed by the forest. Spending time in her environment and doing something to improve it in some way. So if you go into the forest and pick up trash, for example, or feed the birds or animals, or even just simply go there and listen to the sounds of the wind, you may get some messages from her. It's a beautiful way to honor her and show her that you care and that you want to connect with her. A more challenging way of meeting her, and challenges are what she's all about, could be to meet her at the crossroads at midnight. So hang out by a dirt road crossroads or dirt path crossroads. That's where two paths or two roads intersect. Hang out there at midnight by yourself and see what or who you encounter. It might be a person, it might be an animal, it might be a spirit. You're going to have an encounter of some kind. When you do, you can ask that spirit or animal or a person a question and get an honest answer from them. After the encounter, you can turn your back to the crossroads and throw some coins over your shoulder, and without looking back, say it is paid, which is a payment for the encounter. That's a very important part of any kind of magic when you're working with spirits, is to have an exchange and give them something in exchange for that information that they gave you. So that's another way that you can meet her. An indoor way, you saying, oh, I don't know about going to the crossroads. I don't have a forest near me. Does that mean all bets are off? No, there's lots of other ways that you can meet with her and encounter her. Another is to create an altar to her. So you can create a little home altar and include some attributes of her on that altar. So images of her, like a little doll or statue or painting or picture of her, could be a great, centerpiece for your altar. Put some bones around that altar, because she does like bones. She deals with the spirits in the spirit world. So bones are appropriate offering to her. Mortar and pestle on that altar for sure will be seen as an attribute of her and appreciated by her. You can make a little besom, a little broom out of twigs, and put that on the altar as well. You might want to put a candle on your altar to represent fire of her peach, the stove. And that can be another way to honor any spirit. A candle is a beautiful way to do that. You can decorate your altar with spruce or aspen or juniper to represent the forest. You can have images or figurines of snakes, wolves, birds, cats, forest creatures that can all go on there. And of course, leave a little food for her on the altar. She has a voracious appetite. And so having that food for her on the altar will be very appreciated. Another way you can honor Baba Yaga and connect with her is to do some spinning, weaving, or knitting. She is a spinning and weaving goddess or deity or spirit. And so spinning and weaving are some of her attributes. You can spin magical yarn and then take that yarn and make magical items out of it. You can dedicate your weaving or spinning to her. Or you could weave or spin something and then leave that piece of natural yarn or fabric. It should be made out of wool or hemp or linen, possibly cotton, but no acrylic, nothing fake out there. Leave a piece of that natural yarn or something that you created with that yarn out in nature. You could tie it to a tree or leave it in the forest somewhere. That could also be a great offering for her. Another beautiful way to connect with her is to honor old women. As we know from fairy tales, spirits are shapeshifters, and she might show up as any old woman that you might encounter. Honor your elders and speak of the beauty of age. Don't put down people for being old or, ugly or wrinkled or anything like that. Really start to speak of the beauty of age and the beauty of those folds in the skin and a beauty of our older women, our elder women. That's another really wonderful way to honor her. Lastly, really lovely way to honor her and to connect with her is to read her stories. So there's some great books out there that have some new modern takes on her and older takes on her, traditional takes on her. So I'll share a couple books that I recommend. Number one, there's a book called Baba Yaga, The Wild Witch of the East in Russian Fairy Tales by Sibelin Forrester and Jack Sipes. That's a beautiful illustrated book with lots of information about Baba Yaga and some very important stories, some less well-known ones, some very well-known ones. It's a great book. So I recommend that one, Baba Yaga, The Wild Witch of the East in Russian Fairy Tales. Another one that's a little more modern is Finding Baba Yaga, a short novel in verse by Jane Yolen. So that's a beautiful way to connect with her in a new, more modern way. Another modern take on her is Ask Baba Yaga, Otherworldly Advice for Everyday Troubles, which is like if you can imagine Baba Yaga as Dear Abby, that's basically what it is. That book's by Taisia, I'm going to say her name wrong, Kitaskaya and Zura Johnson. So that's Ask Baba Yaga. There's another book called, the most traditional one is Vasilisa the Beautiful and Baba Yaga by Alexander Afanasyev and Ivan Bilibin. That's a beautiful old illustrated book from, turn of the century, 1800s, gorgeous traditional take on her stories. And then lastly, if you want a scholarly book that goes very deep, written by a professor talking about all the different versions of Baba Yaga and all the different, characteristics and referencing all the different fairy tales that we see her in, a book called Baba Yaga, The Ambiguous Mother and Witch of the Russian Folktale by Andreas Johns is another great book. And of course, my book coming out in April, you can check that one out. And that has a lot about Baba Yaga, a lot about magic, Slavic magic, and really is going to be a fun read. Beautifully illustrated by an illustrator, Yaga Sarah is what she goes by, and she's amazing. Beautiful, beautiful illustrations inside. So, well, that about does it for this episode of Baba Yaga's Magic. If you'd like to get even more info about Slavic magic, then check out the Learn page over at the Parlor of Wonders, where you'll find a ton of free resources, including workshops. I've got some Slavic magic workshops coming up this year, blog articles, past podcast episodes, and of course, the way to join me live over Zoom for the Magic Q&A Tea Party every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Just go to parlorofwonders.com and click on the Learn tab to see all the goodies there. I want to say thank you to all the Spell Squad members out there who have subscribed to and shared this podcast with your friends. Thank you to the fabulous folks who have left reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. And those reviews are very helpful to get the word out there. And so I appreciate you taking the time to do them. I want to say thank you to Gilles Navarre for production and engineering. Thank you to Manfred Hofer for announcing. And thank you to you for joining me. I'm looking forward to the next episode when we'll be discussing the Domovik, the Slavic house spirit, and how to connect to him. So until next time, this is Madame Pamita and Baba Yaga saying Za Mahiyu to magic, and may all your stories have the happiest fairy tale endings.